video covers period 3 of the AP US History exam, from 1754 to 1800. This covers themes of conflict, nation building, and expansion. British imperial attempts to reassert control over its colonies and the colonial reaction to these attempts produced a new American republic, along with struggles over the new nation's social, political, and economic identity. With all of this in mind, our first discussion point revolves around the theme of conflict. Britain's victory over France in the imperial struggle for North America led to new conflicts among the British government, the North American colonists, and American Indians, culminating in the creation of a new United States of America. This entire era has been enshrined in a great deal of mythical conversation, but the hard fact remains: the American fight for independence was a truly evolutionary process with a revolutionary result. So we'll start with the various acts of the British government, which spawned a number of colonial reactions from quiet outrage and a hardcore dissent that came in the form of nonviolent resistance and straight up and down violence. Beginning with the Proclamation of 1763, to the Stamp Act, to the Boston Massacre, there was a growing sense of frustration on both sides of the Atlantic. Be sure to acquaint yourself with the acts themselves. These will be ultimately useful when considering what evidence to use should you get a question regarding the clash between the colonists and the British monarchy in the years leading up to the fight for American independence. Check out the supplemental resources including the Proclamation of 1763, the Stamp Act of 1765, and Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre in 1770. This sense of frustration also grew into acts of reciprocal violence, leading up to the actual armed conflict between the colonial army and the British forces. In the time just before the Revolution and throughout the war, these acts include anything from the Boston Tea Party to the tarring and feathering of British tax collectors. Check out the vivid engraving of colonists making a clear show of their anti-British sentiments as they tar and feather a British tax man. Remember, images are always great evidence of what people were thinking, seeing, and feeling during this rather tense period in early American history. On to our next theme: nation building. In the late 18th century, new experiments with democratic ideas and republican forms of government, as well as other new religious, economic, and cultural ideas, challenged traditional imperial systems across the Atlantic world. You must consider the following points as kind of a canon for this second theme. Principles of US government were rooted in Enlightenment ideas, Republican principles, and guarantees of citizens' rights. To ensure the formation of a central or national government, the Articles of Confederation were developed to lay a framework for how 13 very different colonies would band together in some kind of unity to establish a new nation. This was an era of compromise on all fronts. From the simplest constitutional compromises, massive philosophical, political, social, and economic debate fueled the argument between notions of federalism and anti-federalism, and ultimately the writing and ratification of the Constitution of the United States. You must check out the documents we have connected to this era. If you are faced with questions regarding any aspect of the developing nation, evidence from these will be extremely helpful. A plan for new government in 1775, the Declaration of Independence itself from 1776, the Articles of Confederation in 1777, and the ratification of the US Constitution in New York in 1788. Just like any fledgling nation, the new United States of America was not exempt from the trials and tribulations of unifying people under an umbrella of national identity. This brings us to our third key concept of this era, the theme of expansion. Migration within North America, cooperative interaction, and competition for resources intensified conflicts among people and nations, and led to contests over the creation of a multi-ethnic, multiracial national identity. Remember, at this point, Americans have fought and won independence, actualized a new, never-before-seen kind of government, and worked to build a working sense of national unity. The architects of this new nation developed domestic and foreign policies to address the economic, financial, and diplomatic problems faced by the new nation. Established a new modern system of democracy that included embedded political parties. They established a political system that at its heart would provide for a long future of argument, struggle, and amazing advancement into a new, more modern world. So the central question of this era remains: now that Americans have a new nation, with a new government, what the heck are they going to do now? We know that Americans are a bit restless by nature, so the natural move is to take this new experiment of a nation and move it into new territory. The era was marked by some pretty significant moves with some rather intense results. First, as the nation approached the turn of the century, Western migration expanded, and a number of new territories were incorporated into the nation. Second, do remember that these territories were not uninhabited. With these moves came the intensification of conflicts with Native Americans and potential conflicts with other European nations who had laid claim to various other parts of the North American continent. Third, you have to consider that African slavery was still a fundamental part of our new nation. With this expansion started the raft of issues that would arise regarding how slavery would be addressed in the newly acquired territories. Politics, social structures, and the fabric of the national economy were hanging in the balance. We must face an unfortunate contradiction. The United States was a nation built on principles of freedom, but at its inception, this was largely a concept in practice for some, but not all men and women who lived here were equal. This brings us to our third skills focus, the document-based essay question. The document-based essay question is a big part of the new AP exam. In it, you'll be asked to make an argument using and evaluating historical data and documents. This one question will be worth 35% of your grade. The question will be drawn from what you've learned about periods 2 through 8, or between 1607 and 1980. The document-based question will have as its main focus one of the core historical thinking skills. Why did something happen? How did things change and/or remain the same? Why do we give labels to blocks of time? Why is there not just one story of an event? How are historical occurrences the same and different? How does an event or movement fit the longer story of American history? You'll be provided with 6 or 7 documents, and you can use them all or all but one in your answer. Remember, you can only eliminate one document, so review them all carefully. You will have 60 minutes to complete this question. Spend 15 minutes planning the essay, and then spend 45 minutes writing. Develop a thesis statement that addresses the question. This is going to be your ribbon that threads through every aspect of the coming essay. This must be a powerful statement based on what the question is asking and the documents provided for your consideration. Carefully assess the documents for how they will contribute to your argument. This is the foundation of whatever argument you'll be making in your discussion. Start by identifying evidence that will support your thesis statement. Review the question again and make sure that you are addressing all elements. Then, the essay should basically write itself. Finally, remember that this document-based question isn't designed to see what a good writer you are, though we know that's an important part of it. It's designed to see what a good historian you are, and that means you must clearly illustrate why and how these documents support your thesis. You must strengthen your argument with historical examples outside the documents provided. And you must connect your argument to broader events or processes. Why is this an important story to tell? You'll find dozens of documents on which to practice your historical assessment skills, as well as tips from the Gilder Lehrman Collection Curator in the AP Online Guide.